Ahoy! Yesterday I made a tier list where I talked about the current performance of gods, and one of the things that stood out that especially in high level ranked, especially in Plat Plus, Diamond Plus, the gods that performed incredibly well were healers. And if you remember, not too long ago we had a change to healing items that essentially ended up improving them in various ways. And because of that, I wanted to see how things are going with those items. Because you may also remember that Cat Shield was kind of considered a niche item, but generally good stat-wise, whereas Rod of Asclepius, for the most part, was hardly even bought in the first place. And there's something here that I found out that I found very, very, very interesting. We're going to start with Aphrodite here. We're going to have a look at a few different gods regarding the current state of items. Because if we scroll down here, then you'll have your items, you can sort them by highest win rate or by the number of matches. So if we look at the number of matches first, you'll see the items you would expect here, sitting around 60%-ish win rate. In Diamond Plus specifically, we're only going to look at Diamond Plus here because the sample size is large enough. And yeah, we're like 1,000 to 300 matches. But if we go to the win rate, then the highest win rate are the items that are barely ever bought in the first place. If you're not familiar with the concept of sample size, this is only played in 2 matches, so this can basically be very random luck, that somebody just got lucky in 2 matches and won with that twice. If this was 100 matches, the likelihood of somebody just getting lucky would be a lot lower, and that would be more of an indication that if this item works out so good so many times, it works out so well so many times, then maybe there's more to it. And that's what we'll see here, right? So the next part of the list here is still very, very high win rate items that are barely even bought. You could make a case for maybe Traveler's Shoes or Pridwin here, but even those are super small sample size. And then, again, we have very high win rate items that are barely even bought at all. And here we get here. And suddenly, we have an item that has been bought 300 times, so a fair bit more of a sample size than all of these, really, and that still sits at 71% win rate. And that is Rod of Asclepius. Interesting case to be made for Shield of Regrowth here as well, by the way, which has a decent number of matches, but that's another story for another day, maybe. So I thought that was very interesting that Aphrodite in Diamond Plus has a 71% win rate when she buys Rod of Asclepius. Now, what this doesn't tell us is when this item is bought. There are certain items that are very late game, and when a god that is designed for late game builds them, then it means the item and them being in late game often leads to them winning the match. So for example, I would expect certain crit items on ADCs, on late game ADCs to have a relatively high win rate because they got to the point in late game where they could buy this item, so it's relatively likely that they could win. And likewise, expensive items also often come with a higher win rate because if you're already winning a match, you're more likely to be able to afford an expensive item in the first place. So it doesn't always indicate that the win rate automatically means that this item leads to that win rate. But the connection here is pretty strong still when it's a 71% win rate across a large number of matches for an item that previously was really considered bad. And obviously this goes hand in hand with this item being buffed recently. So I would say there is at least some level of connection here. And I don't think this is inherently an item you only buy in late game when you've build all the other things, or that you only buy when you're winning. I think this is a very flexible item in its stats. You probably wouldn't build it too early because you need some MP5 first, maybe and some clear, but around 3rd, 4th item, you can absolutely build this if it's what you're after. So let's see what we have for other gods here. We have Chang'e as well. Chang'e, first, if we go to the number of matches, we want to see that the other way around. First, you have your standard items here, sitting around 60% win rate. That was the same for Aphrodite, by the way. Again, Diamond Plus, last patch. And if we go here, then we'll still not see it. But if we go here, then we'll see Rod of Asclepius, and you see how it stands out. Look at all of these being like around the same area. Tree of Desolation actually on pretty well, relatively speaking. But then Rod of Asclepius, it's 77% win rate. Like, it's almost a guaranteed win. Now with Chang'e, I would say it's maybe a little bit more credited to her not building this as early. I would say on Aphrodite, you would be able to build Rod of Asclepius a little bit earlier in general than on Chang'e. I think you want some other items on Chang'e first. But again, it's a very strong indication that Asclepius is doing a lot better than a lot of people, me included, gave it credit for a long time. Since the healing passive itself, like the stats are still not overwhelming anything, but the healing passive itself is so good now that it applies to everything that it leads to such a high win rate. And then we have the same thing again with Hel as well, where we can also look at the number of matches, and we don't find it on the first page, but here on the second page, it sits at 66%. Rod of Tahuti pretty high on Hel as well. That's pretty interesting. Again, there's some other things that stand out, but Rod of Asclepius is the only one that is this super consistent item when it comes to performing really, really well. And what I also thought was interesting in that context was, how does anti-heal do in comparison? And I wanted to see that on Set. I decided to look at Set because I thought he's like an interesting god to show what items generally do well. And what I thought I would see here maybe is like that I could demonstrate that an item like Sledge doesn't do well on the same level. Like, I think everyone would agree that Sledge is a good item, a strong item in general, and it's a good item on Set. And still, even though it's built a lot, the win rate is more around 60% and not 70-something%. But while I found that, just to demonstrate that difference between other good items on other gods and Rod of Asclepius specifically, I also found that Brawler's Beatstick's win rate, compared to everything else here, is a fair bit lower. And that doesn't necessarily mean that this is an issue with Brawler's Beatstick or that Brawler's Beatstick is bad, but Brawler's Beatstick is more likely to be built when there is more healing, when there is more healing on the enemy team that makes it worth building this item. So this indicates to us that Set loses more matches when there's healing present on the enemy team, which is obviously more present, and Brawlers is also better countered when there's a Rod of Asclepius. So that, again, goes hand in hand. It goes together, and it works out very much in Rod of Asclepius' favor. But there's also Chaos Shield, Cat Shield, and I wanted to see if it's the same picture here. So the first god that we're going to look at here is the obvious case of Guan Yu. I think he, like, one of the highest win rate gods in Plat Plus. I think he's like third or second, and in Diamond Plus is sixth in win rate. Just massively went up with his buffs and the healing. Again, look at my tier list if you want to see more about that. But in his case, let's have a look at the matches here as well. We see that Cat Shield is actually being built a lot. Cat Shield is more valued. This is interesting, right? Rod of Asclepius typically shows up on the second page of items that people build, but people actually build Cat Shield more frequently. So we have a larger sample size, and it still outperforms all the other items on the first page here, at least. If we go to the second page, we have like Pridwin around here with a lot less usage, but that's actually like close to Cat Shield in win rate at least, which is also an interesting item for him anyways with his ultimate and everything. So, and the CDR obviously for healing. So we can see that other items get close. It's not quite as ridiculous as it is for Rod of Asclepius, but it's still a very, very, very strong item here. Now, what we typically don't find is people building Rod of Asclepius if they're not healers themselves. That's just super, super rare. But we have some characters that will sometimes build Caduceus Shield even though they don't heal others. Sometimes they do it for self-heal or just generally build it for their team because, again, it's a stat-wise a pretty efficient item. And I wanted to see how that goes as well. So I took Varman, who has some self-heal, but not that much. I think I actually had to go for the matches here because it's not built very frequently. Let me find it again. It was somewhere here. Oh, maybe it was not under the matches. Maybe I did it wrong. Did I skip it? There it is. So Cat Shield here actually does not perform to the same degree, even though Varman has some self-heal. 53% win rate is still good, of course, but given the number of matches and everything, it doesn't stand out nearly as much as we saw on Guan Yu. So building a Cat Shield on gods that don't directly utilize it for others along with themselves seems to not have quite the same impact, which you could also see reflected on Hercules. Let's see if I can find that relatively quickly. It's not. This is very interesting, by the way, that the most built item on Hercules is in fact Shield of Regrowth at the moment in Diamond Plus, more than Warrior Tabai, because you can sometimes build into other boots. I thought that was fascinating that it's so staple for him. And it's not even winning that much, unfortunately. But there should be cat shield somewhere down here. Here. A cat shield is really not built much on hurt. It sits at a 54% win rate, which is still not bad at all. But like looking at like Spirit Rope, for example, it's also not great, right? It's not a particularly crazy item. Genji's Guard apparently doesn't work at the moment at all. Also interesting. But this is something I think that's worth keeping in mind, that cat shield doesn't really pull its weight as much if there are not that many other healers present. But we're not done with the story, because there's another goddess I wanted to look at, and that's Nike. So Nike, win rate #1 at the moment, or third overall. We're looking at a Diamond Plus, and she is a very team-oriented character, right? She is a character that will basically work best if you build stuff that helps yourself to some degree to survive, and then you do your damage with Mystical Mail, and by slowing enemies and being shielded and blocking damage, and yeah, just, you know, have stuff like Void Shield for your allies. So that even now, after changes, she's still not somebody who will have the most massive impact on their own. And I wanted to see what that means for Caduceus' shield, given that she's not exactly big on self-healing, but she might work well in a team that has another healer, and she might build it for supporting purposes. By the way, another interesting thing here, Talisman of Energy being built. Again, as a team helping item on her a lot as well. So let's skip down a bit. I think here it is. And here we see, again, it's a very low sample size, so this is not sufficient. It's 39 games. It's not enough to tell us, okay, this is insanely good or something. But in those 39 games, we again see a very, very, very high win rate. So this may point towards this being helpful for those gods that are more about the team life, basically. If someone else has heals and someone else has heals and she has the peels, basically, then that seems to work out very well for team. We can also look at Platinum Plus, because that should give us a bit more of a sample size in comparison here for the number of players using this item. Actually, it does not. That is unfortunate. It seems like nothing changed here. That is very strange. I know that these items typically change when you switch around. Let's just see if we can get something else out of all ranks. I mean, not that that's going to be very representative. It seems that in Platinum Plus, no one really builds Cat Shield. They're only building it in Diamond. Yeah, and if you look at like all matches, you still see a higher win rate. But then that's a very different story, because this is this is across all levels of play. So yeah, I just wanted to show you guys that. So I think that's very, very interesting, especially for Role of Asclepius. If you're somebody like me who has been just like brushing that off for a while, saying, oh, it's not worth building it, the effect is just not as consistent and the stats are not good enough or whatever, that is no longer the case. Role of Asclepius is definitely good now, and with this current win rate, I would say, statistically speaking, the best item in Conquest on the gods that can make use of it. And then obviously Cat Shield applies to a similar level, at least, for those gods that have healing on a larger scale, like Guan Yu, like Horus or something, whereas it doesn't work as well for gods that use it to supplement it for other characters on their team, but it's still not working poorly either, so it's not a bad item at all. It's just not as overwhelming in those situations. And that's it for this video. I hope this was interesting, insightful. If you're new to the channel, feel sub button and maybe the bell so you get notified of other upcoming videos. I hope to see you for the next one soon. Duke Sloth, out.